Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Canon. It's time for the third episode of our deep dive into the Book of Boba Fett. In case you missed the first two videos, I'll throw a card in the top right corner so you can check those out. In those videos, we go over the reason for Boba's transformation from a ruthless bounty hunter to a merciful daimyo. Again, if you guys have been liking the videos so far, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. And with the Kenobi series right around the corner, there's going to be a lot. Today we're going over episode 3, The Streets of Mos Eisley. This episode begins with 8D8 telling Boba and Fennec about how Jabba's empire was carved up by Bib Fortuna after his death. Not being powerful enough to maintain control himself, Bib Fortuna split the territory between three families, the Trandoshans, the Aqualish, and the Klatooinians. These three families kept each other in check while Fortuna paid off the mayor Mak Shaiz to maintain an uneasy peace. At this point, Boba asks about the assassins from the Order of the Night Wind who were sent to kill him in the first episode. Fennec says, the mayor has no power, somebody else is behind that play. I don't know about this. Based on what we'll see later in the episode when the mayor's fled Mos Eisley, I think he's still the one who sent the assassins. The Hutts aren't subtle. When they wanted him to back down, they confronted Boba in front of the whole freaking town with Krrsantan at their side. The mayor, on the other hand, is sneaky, sending the major domo to do his bidding, all the while dealing with the Pykes behind everyone's back. What we've got here is
failure to communicate.
What we've got here is a three-way power struggle between the mayor, the Hutt twins, and Boba. Next, a local watermonger comes to see Boba because the Power Rangers, the insolent street youths, have been stealing his water. This guy's a total sycophant, continually telling Boba that he's insulted on his behalf, that the local criminals neither fear nor respect him. He even goes so far as to say, quote, "No one respects you." This is enough to make Boba agree to see what's going on. Boba and Fennec head down to the workers' district to confront the street youths. The way Lorntha Peel talked about these guys, saying they were modifying their bodies with droid parts to make themselves even more deadly, I was initially pretty excited to see them. Some of the coolest characters in Star Wars have been cybernetically enhanced or have used robotic prostheses. For example, Vader, Maul, Anakin. While these kids themselves are interesting enough, this is the first time we see the now infamous Vespa Speeders. These things completely ripped me out of the moment. Here's the thing, the Speeders themselves aren't the problem. Frankly, they'd look perfectly fine on Coruscant or Nar Shaddaa, but Tatooine? They don't look even remotely like anything else on the planet. They look way too flashy, yet also silly and ridiculous, for the backwater that is Tatooine. Not only do they not at all fit the aesthetic, but aren't these kids supposedly stealing water because they're broke? The biker girl even says as much, but apparently they have enough money to buy and immaculately maintain these silly little scooter speeders. Anyway, leaving the scooters behind, Boba removes his helmet. This is his classic move when he wants someone to trust him. And he tells them that if there isn't any work, they'll work for him. The kids are pretty gutsy. They were bold, or foolish, enough to immediately admit to having stolen the water, and then they bluntly call out Boba for not reining in the outrageous cost of water. I can see why he would want to take them under his wing. He tells them, "You better fight as good as you talk dank." I like how the word dank between this show and The Mandalorian is quickly becoming a classic Star Wars curse word. You'll remember Mando's constantly saying, "Dank Ferric." At this point, Lorntha Peel comes running out from wherever he was eavesdropping and yells at Boba for just letting the kids off the hook. Boba immediately wins the respect of the mods when he stiff-arms the watermonger into accepting 500 credits instead of 1,300. Now we jump to Boba having another FlashBacta. I'm actually a bit surprised that he's still dreaming about his dad leaving him on Kamino after the previous episode where he seemed to come to peace with the idea of moving on from his dad's legacy. But I guess traumatic childhood events will still haunt us even when we've effectively moved past them. Then we see Boba in his new Tusken robes, riding a bantha, but this is also the last time we'll see his Tusken tribe alive. Boba heads to Mos Eisley, which the Pykes are using as their headquarters. Speaking of Pykes and heads, as Boba enters the city, he sees the locals mounting stormtrooper heads on Pykes. Okay, they're probably just empty helmets, but still. You'll remember we actually saw these stormtrooper helmets back in the very first season of The Mandalorian. This means that Boba's been living among the Tuskens throughout the entirety of the events of Return of the Jedi, and probably another year afterward, which is when the Battle of Jakku officially saw the end of the Empire. Another fun little Easter egg is that we actually see Peli Motto, the hangar boss from The Mandalorian, with her 3 pit droids in the background of this shot. Boba goes in to meet with the leader of the Pykes in Mos Eisley. He's there to take payment for the free passage of the Pykes through the Tusken territory. However, the Pike leader informs him that the Kintan Striders, that's the name of the Nikto speeder gang, have already been paid for safe passage through the same territory. Boba says, "The sands have belonged to the Tuskens since the oceans dried." This is actually the second reference in this episode to the ancient history of Tatooine. You'll remember that Lawrence the Peel, the watermonger, mentioned earlier that the entire planet used to be covered in water. This was brought up in the previous episode as well, actually, by the Tusken chief. In my last video, we talked about how Tatooine was desiccated by the infinite empire of the Rakatans. The fact that this show keeps bringing up this ancient history makes me really hopeful that we're going to see Tatooine in this earlier state, maybe in an upcoming Old Republic show. Originally, the showrunners for Game of Thrones had actually signed on with Lucasfilm to run this project, but they announced that they were backing out of the contract a year or two ago. But I'm still hopeful that we're going to see some KOTOR content, especially now that PlayStation is doing a full remake of the original Knights of the Old Republic game. Things seem to be pointing in that direction. Anyway, back to Boba and the Pykes. Boba tells them that he will deal with the Kintan Striders and leaves. As Boba nears the Tusken camp, he sees smoke in the distance. He jumps off his bantha and starts running, only to find the Tusken camp destroyed. And just like that, Boba's lost his entire family once again. We see the bodies of many Tuskens lying strewn about, including the chief. As Boba performs the funeral rites for his fallen friends, there's a heartbreaking moment where we see Boba burning the gaffi sticks. After he places the chief's gaffi on the pyre, we see him gently hold the small, toy gaffi that belonged to the Tusken kid, who he saved from the behemoth in the earlier episodes. I'm amazed at how attached I've become to the Tuskens after just 2 episodes. I feel like we saw so much more of them, but no, it's just the 2 episodes. This is even more impressive when you realize that we never even saw their faces. One important note, though, noticeably absent from the scene of carnage that Boba stumbles on, is the Tusken warriors nowhere to be found. I personally think that she survived the attack, or maybe was taken prisoner, but I think we'll probably see her again. I don't know, she just seems like way too important of a character to just leave out of this big emotional scene. Just as this scene ends, Boba gets ripped out of his FlashBacta by Black Krrsantan. I mean, the Hutts even told him to sleep lightly. I guess they were pretty serious. What follows is a pretty good-looking fight between Krrsantan and Boba, the mods, and the Gamorreans. Overall, I really like this scene. It looks fantastic, but I do have a few complaints about what actually happens in the fight. First, Boba is nuts for charging Krrsantan right when he gets up. Grab your gun and armor, man. You're not going to beat a Wookiee in a fistfight. Luckily, Krrsantan throws him right to them immediately afterward. As Boba tries to get his whistling birds armed, Krrsantan activates his electro knuckles and absolutely clobbers Boba across the face. Yet, he seems totally unfazed and gets right back up. Look, I'm all for Boba being one tough dude, but that's just ridiculous. He should be out cold. Boba proceeds to stab Krrsantan with his gaffi stick and leaves it lodged in his back. Again, awesome. But then Krrsantan picks him up and begins giving him the Wookiee death hug, and we even hear what's likely the popping and snapping of bones. Again, unless Krrsantan is intentionally dragging this out, Boba should be dead. Then the mods show up and Boba jumps right back to his feet. Again, Krrsantan is known throughout the galaxy for being one of the most savage fighters there is. He should be mopping the floor with these guys. The whole thing feels a lot like when you would play with action figures as a kid. No matter what the other guy did, you always would say something like, "Oh well, my guy has a shield that's impervious to that weapon, so I win." Throughout the whole fight, no one really seems to even get slightly injured, except for maybe the poor Gamorreans. For some reason, Krrsantan doesn't hold back on those guys and even bites one badly enough that Boba sends him to his personal Bacta tank. That was actually a pretty cool move on his part again, showing that he leads by respect and honor as daimyo of Mos Espa. Finally, Fennec comes out and drops Krrsantan into the Rancor pit and the fight's over. Well, at least I thought it was over until Boba comes running out in a freaking bathrobe. Like I said in the last episode, I'm actually okay with the direction they're taking Boba Fett in this show, but putting Bathrobe Boba next to his Return of the Jedi counterpart, it's a pretty funny image. As Boba and Fennec deliberate on how to respond to the second assassination attempt, the Hutt twins actually come to Boba with a peace offering. Boba goes out to meet them in full armor, but they tell him that they and he were both lied to by Mayor Mok Shaiz, who's already promised Tatooine to the Pykes Syndicate. They apologize for sending Krrsantan to kill him, but they never mention the Night Wind. This reinforces the idea that it was actually the mayor or his major domo who sent those assassins after Boba. They were trying to get rid of him before the Hutts ever showed up. The Hutts then say, "Sell the Wookiee back to the gladiators. He is our tribute to you." The twins are leaving Tatooine, but Boba's made it clear that he's not. When they say, "He's our tribute to you," this almost makes it sound like the Hutts are going to back Boba against the Pykes if it comes down to it. That, or maybe this is just their way of wishing him luck. I'm not sure where this respect is suddenly coming from. I guess it's because he was able to capture Krrsantan without dying. Immediately, Boba tells the Gamorrean, "Release him. No hard feelings. It's just business. Take it from an ex-bounty hunter. Don't work for Scugholes. It's not worth it." Like Krrsantan, Boba used to work for the Hutts, and it nearly got him killed. Letting Krrsantan walk is another honorable move on Boba's part. Next, we get an epic scene with Danny Trejo and a Rancor. The Rancor looks amazing, and I can't tell if it's CGI or an actual practical model. Regardless, it's epic. Danny Trejo starts teaching Boba about Rancors and says, "It is said that the witches of Dathomir even rode them through the forest and fens." This is actually a pretty deep cut. It's a reference to the witches of Dathomir from the Legends novel, The Courtship of Princess Leia. In Legends, the witches of Dathomir were quite different than their Clone Wars counterparts. For example, they were humans in Legends, whereas they're human Zabrak hybrids in the Clone Wars. In Legends, a Jedi named Alia was exiled to Dathomir. She was said to be the mother of all future witches who lived on Dathomir. Mother Talzin in the Clone Wars is based loosely on Alia. In Legends, not only did the witches of Dathomir ride Rancors, they would actually feed the men to them if they sired sons instead of more daughters to add to the ranks of the witches. Boba wants to learn to ride his new Rancor and says, "I've ridden beasts 10 times its size." I can only assume he's referencing the Mythosaur. This is the giant dragon-like creature that Boba Fett was seen riding in the original holiday special from 1978. That was actually the very first appearance of Boba Fett, and really the only good thing to come out of the holiday special. In Legends, Mythosaurs were native to the planet Mandalore, and dominated the world until Mandalore the First and his Crusaders drove them to extinction as they conquered the world for themselves. Afterward, the skull of the Mythosaur became the symbol of Mandalore. This is the skull that can be seen on Boba's left pauldron, that's the name for the armored shoulder pad. We know from The Mandalorian that the signet placed on a Mandalorian's pauldron must have a significant personal meaning. Who knows, maybe the Mythosaur is not actually extinct and Boba has actually ridden one. I'd love to see that, and my theory is that we might just see that in the coming seasons of this show, but more on that later. When Fennec is unable to set up a meeting with the mayor, Boba leaves and tells the beast tamer to feed the Rancor a full Ronto carcass. A Ronto is the giant creature that we see the Jawas riding in Mos Eisley at the beginning of A New Hope. It was actually added for the 97 special edition of Episode 4. It got its name from the fact that the designers at ILM actually used the Brontosaurus model from Jurassic Park to create it, so they always referred to it as the Bronto. George Lucas simply dropped the B and we're left with Ronto. In the last sequence of the episode, Boba, Fennec, and the mods head to the mayor's office only to find that he's fled. The Majordomo tries to stall them, but then he too tries to make an escape, and this is where things go south. The mods jump on their Vespa Speeders and slowly take off after him. Okay, honestly, the speed of the chase doesn't really bug me. They're in narrow little city streets, which makes it really hard for sharp turns, but it's just goofy, ridiculous appearance of these speeders that really pulls me out of it. Again, if we were on Coruscant or Nar Shaddaa, I'd honestly have no beef with these things, but they just look wrong on Tatooine. It's like if someone showed up to go off-roading in Moab with a Mini Cooper instead of a Jeep. It just doesn't work. Anyway, there's another cool Easter egg or two during this scene. The mod on the yellow Vespa crashes through a giant version of Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art of Jabba's throne room for Return of the Jedi. You'll even notice Boba standing just to Jabba's left. Very cool little nod. Also, we see a droid pulling a rickshaw that looks just like the one Anakin and Padme rode when they returned to Tatooine in Episode 2. Lastly, the Majordomo crashes into a giant cart of Melu Run fruits. This is the spiky-looking fruit that was originally identified in the Rebels TV series. There's actually an entire episode based around them that's actually pretty good. Just to throw a quick plug here for Rebels, if you haven't watched that series, you should. The art, though a little jarring at first, pays homage to tons of Ralph McQuarrie's concept designs for the original trilogy. It's quintessential Star Wars. Also, the show may have a few childish episodes, but there's also some seriously dark, intense stuff in Season 2 especially. And if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. Boba suddenly drops in using his jetpack. Why he didn't just take out the Majordomo himself, I'll never know. And the Majordomo says that the mayor is gone and is working with the Pykes. The episode ends as we watch a big group of Pykes arriving on Tatooine to take control of the spice trade. Overall, this episode was pretty good. I definitely had some complaints, mostly regarding the Vespa Speeders and the well-choreographed but nonsensical fight scenes where no one really got hurt. But overall, I still really liked it. There's some great Easter eggs, and Black Krrsantan alone made the episode awesome for me. Definitely not as much substance as the prior 2 episodes where we really saw a drastic philosophical transformation for Boba, but a very fun episode nonetheless. Well, that'll do it for this deep dive episode. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Did you like the fight scenes? What did you think about the mods and their Vespas? Don't forget to hit the like button if you made it this far, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode or any of the other stuff that I've got coming out. And there's going to be a lot. Again, Kenobi is right around the corner. Thanks, guys, and may the Force be with you.